This is the eLearn podcast. If you're passionate about the future of learning, you're in the right place. The expert guests on this show provide insights into the latest strategies, practices, and technologies for creating killer online learning outcomes. My name's Ladek, and I'm your host from OpenLMS. The eLearn podcast is sponsored by eLearn Magazine, your go-to resource for all things online learning. Click-by-click how-to articles, the latest in edtech, spotlight on successful outcomes and trends in the marketplace. Subscribe today and never miss a post at elearnmagazine.com. And OpenLMS, a company leveraging open source software to deliver effective, customized, and engaging learning experiences for schools, universities, companies, and governments around the world since 2005. Learn more at openlms.net. Hello, everyone. My name is Ladek, and my guests for today are Deanna Flanagan, who's a partner, learning manager, and a senior instructional designer, and Mike Belknap, who is a training operations manager. They both work for a company called Trintech, which is a provider of financial software. They've created massive amounts of high-quality, consistent learning content for Trintech, and I wanted to find out how they scaled this operation. So in this conversation, Deanna, Mike, and I talk about how they create consistency in their education products by using templates. We also discuss what resources are needed to ensure high quality when you're creating huge volumes of learning. You'll then hear us discuss what the National Association of State Boards of Accountancy are, the NASBA. And we talk about that specifically, although that relates to Trintech. We talk about why access to a standards body like this can be an advantage when creating learning material. This also then leads us to a discussion about the differences between templates and master slides and why these differences are important. We then move on to talk about the advantages and challenges of hiring interns and teachers to build learning rapidly and at scale. And then we discuss the skills that you should be looking for if you want to find candidates that will help replicate this process in your practice. And then finally, we tie together our conversation by talking about when you're building for upskilling or reskilling, why focusing on what learners actually need is always the right choice. And then how to make sure that you're placing your learners at the center of what you're creating. And remember, we record this podcast live so that we can interact with you, our listeners, in real time. So if you'd like to join the fun every week on LinkedIn, Facebook, or YouTube, just come on over to elearnmagazine.com and subscribe. Now, I give you Deanna and Mike. Hello, everyone. This is Ladek coming to you from OpenLMS, as you just heard in our introduction there. Fantastic. And I'm super happy to invite my guests onto the stage here, Deanna Flanagan and Mike Belknap. Super nice to meet and see both of you. As we always do, it's always hard for me when I have two guests because I'm not sure like who's going to talk over who, right? Like, well, let's start with Deanna. Why don't you give us, the 30 seconds on who you are, kind of what your background is, and I will mention you both work for a company called Trintech, but tell us about sort of your focus, what you do.
I've been with Trintech about 3.5 years. I'm a partner, learning manager, and a senior instructional designer on the customer success team. And our goal was to create learning initially for partners. That's why I was hired at the time that I was hired, was to create e-learning for partners to get them up to speed on configuration as quickly as possible.
Awesome. When you, Mike, I'm going to ask a question before I even let you get your introduction.
Yeah, no problem.
What does partner mean to you? Is it a school? Is it a company? Is it anybody who needs learning? What does that mean kind of in the Trintech universe?
For partners, we sell financial close software to accounting people, KPMG, Deloitte's, Accenture's, the big boys, and then they sell our software to their customers.
Okay, fantastic. Thanks for clarifying that, just so we know kind of the universe we're operating in. Mike, why don't you tell us about yourself?
Yeah, my name's Mike Belknap. I've been with Trintech almost 3 years now. So I started in the tax software side doing training and then came over to Trintech originally to help Deanna as an instructional designer. And then that morphed into my current role, which is training operations manager. So I'm responsible for LMS administration, training coordination, and training delivery, and part-time instructional design now.
Fantastic. I reached out to both of you because I saw that you were going to be presenting what we're going to talk about at DevLearn last week. I hope that went well, but then we can talk about that in a second. because it's one of those problems I think that, everyone in the learning space, especially in the design space, deals with. How do you and the question is, how do you create consistency in the educational product that you're putting out there at the end of the day, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. But your problem was even bigger. You kind of had one of these supersized, oversized problems that I think kind of started as like, hey, let's do something, and then a way to turn it into that, and then it kind of grew. I don't want to tell the story, Deanna. Why don't you kind of tee up the problem for us and like kind of take us to the genesis of where did this start, and kind of how did it balloon into something that you really needed a process for?
So before we took on the partner relationship, professional services would go in and configure the software for a new customer, and then they would go ahead and run with it. But now we're taking on the partner role, and they want the partners to be able to do what professional services does, but we don't have time for professional services to train them. So it was a matter of, let's create some e-learning so that they can run through that, learn how to configure the system, and then they can install that for their customers. And so I was heads down, let's build partner configuration training.
Sure. Yeah.
That's the only thing I'm focused on. And they liked it. They really, really liked it. And that made everybody take a step backwards and say, okay, we really have three roles. We have the user role, the admin role, and the configuration role. And we have partners, customers, and internal folks who all need this information. Why don't we leverage all of that across all of these users and start building? And so Mike quickly joined the team to kind of bring that up to scale. And we started out with a very loose template, no master slides, no checklist. And it started to evolve.
Awesome. Mike, give me a sense of, you had mentioned some pretty big names that your company partners with, and then, you kind of resell your software into their client base. How big how many eyeballs are we talking about that get to use this thing and that you're potentially managing and creating learning for?
So I know after we launched the program, we ran some numbers, and we're looking at, I think it was, how many partners do you remember, Deanna, took the training this past year?
232.
232 unique partners, so users. They're not all individual firms, but unique users of our partners took over 500 lessons. So it's a 1,400% increase from last year. So the adoption has been outstanding.
That's fantastic.
The partners really do love the program.
Cool. The part that I was really interested in, like even, 500 lessons over 200 partners. It's a huge universe to consider and think about.
Yeah.
Deanna, take me to, so, as you started as one person, kind of creating, a template and those kinds of things. One of the interesting things about the conversation we had prior to this was you needed to start to achieve scale in order to deliver this learning, right? To deliver these classes, deliver these modules, whatever we want to call them, out to your partners. What does that entail? I guess I want to I'm trying to color the story in here. What does that entail? And then I want to get to the story of how do you do that with consistency across different skill levels, et cetera. Hi, I'm jumping into the conversation real quick to ask you a very simple, quick favor. If you are enjoying what you're listening to right now, if it's interesting, if it's entertaining, if you're pulling away value, if you're learning something, whatever the case may be, do me a favor and just hit subscribe on your podcast player right now. If it's on your phone, if you're listening on a computer, whatever it is, just take 2 seconds right now, hit subscribe. It helps us. You'll never miss an episode, and everybody wins. And if you really like this content, a lot, come on over to eLearn Magazine, throw your email address in there and subscribe there as well for other great content around our blog posts, around the events we play, and of course, this podcast as well. Thank you very much. And now back to the show.
Well, the resources so Mike and I both have quite a bit of e-learning background and knowledge, and we know what triggers and layers and states are and all of that stuff. But the resources that we were given to help us didn't. So the first summer we had 4 interns, 2 were K-12 teachers, and 2 were high school kids. And then we had 2 brand new e-learning
Professionals.
Instructional
We can call
design.
them professionals. Come on, they're professionals.
They were professionals, but they had no experience with Articulate. So we had to really figure out a lot of structure around that in order to build consistency. So we built out a template, and it continued to iterate over time. That template got better and better. And then we also created master slides that really locked down, I guess the difference between templates and master slides locks down absolutely everything you possibly can. Anything that doesn't move, it's in the same place, it functions the same way every time, is a master slide. And then the template covers every scenario that we could think of. And by the time we built this, we had 30 lessons already developed. So we knew what we were dealing with. We knew what the variables were. We knew what most of the situations were going to be that we needed to use the master slide and the template for. I don't know if you want to bring the template up, Mike.
Well, I think I would like to talk about why we did this also. Sure. So it got to the point where we wanted to step back, and we had new products coming out, and we didn't want to maintain multiple templates for multiple products. So that's when we really paused and stepped back to consider how can we use not just the content in multiple places, but also how can we use one template so that we're not having to update and maintain individual templates for individual products. So that's when we did what Deanna was talking about. We stepped it up to our branding. We moved it up to the corporate level. So instead of a product specific template, it was a company branded template, which then allowed us to, anything that we created, we could use one template to create our content for. So we didn't have to worry about maintaining multiple templates. And then we locked everything down. So everything that was static, everything. And also at the same time, we're applying for CPE credit with NASBA.
Okay.
So NASBA has a laundry list of requirements that need to be in place for every course that we offer CPE for. So all of these requirements needed to be included in each course. Well, since it's going to be the same for every course, then it's the perfect candidate for the master slides. So all these requirements we locked down into the master slides. I have
to pause you and back you up, because you've just put a whole bunch of stuff on the table that most of the people listening here may not necessarily know, like who NPSE and NASBA and PCE,
yeah, sure,
those kinds of things. Yeah. So if you wouldn't mind, and I'd also love, I mean, we're talking, we're kind of living in your brain in the Articulate universe, which, okay, most designers are going to know about that, but then, there's a lot of people in the audience right now who are professors, who are, instructors, who are, want to understand how to do this, but they've never used that platform before. So can you give us a little deeper understanding of what is a template? Like, what does this look like?
Yeah, sure.
And when you're talking about corporate branding, like, is that what are you branding Trintech? Are you branding each of your partners? Like, et cetera, et cetera. So there's like 20 questions in there. I apologize.
Yeah, no.
But that's my job. Like, I gotta make sure that everybody's,
So let me start with NASBA, and then if we can take a look at the actual
100%.
And we can walk through that. So NASBA is the National Association of State Boards of Accountancy. So if you're a licensed CPA, you have to acquire a certain number of CPE credits that could be annually or every other year to maintain your credentials. So NASBA, we have to apply through NASBA to be approved to offer CPE credit for our learning. So that's our live instructor-led, our webinars, but then also self-study, which eLearning falls under self-study. So those are individual applications. So we had already been approved, and we're already offering CPE for our live instructor-led and our webinars, but we also wanted to be able to offer CPE for eLearning, because that's not just a value add for our customer, but also for us, because it's a differentiator for us in the marketplace. So that was important for us. So the template and the master slides helped us to accomplish this. So if I can go ahead and show my screen.
Yeah, so we'll just bring it up there. And we will make you a little smaller so people can see.
So this is the end product, but to answer your question specifically, so this is what we're calling our template. So it consists of a set of slides that can be used for every course that we create with eLearning. Deanna, do you want to talk through the master slides while we're in here?
Sure. So the first thing we did was set up the master slides. And master slides are a lot like a PowerPoint master slide, where it's the same format, the same text, it's in the same place. And like we keep saying, everything on the master slide is static. So these first couple are the previous and next button. We want them to be the same colors, the same location every single time. These have hotspots on them. That's why they look just a wee bit blurry. But we want the hotspot to work same place, same time, every time. In terms of using Articulate for master slides, if you're going to do a slide that just has a couple of different graphics on it, has to be the first slide in your master slides. Otherwise, the following layers will lay on top of it. That was a painful learning curve.
I'm sure that more than one project got done incorrectly. Sure.
Well, and for the non-Articulate users, this is one reason I like using Articulate. It's very similar to PowerPoint. So it has the same feel. The master slides operate the same way as PowerPoint would. So you're creating a set of layouts that you can then apply to different slides.
Sure. And I want to remember, so for those people who are only getting the audio version of this, right? Like right now we're kind of going through, I believe we're looking at it just like a PowerPoint right now. Is that correct? Or are we actually in Articulate?
No, this is Articulate Storyline.
Okay. So so we're in Articulate and we're going through each of the template slides. In this particular case, we're looking at, a particular template that just has then you said that's the previous and next buttons at the bottom right-hand side of the screen there. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. So we do technical simulation-based training. That's what our eLearning is. So the slide layout that we're looking at now is used as part of our simulation. So it's a screen recording that steps them through how to complete a specific task in our software.
Okay. All right.
So again, these layers are static. They'll never change. The triggers will always either go forward or backwards. So these are another perfect example of what to apply to your master slides because you'll never need to modify them.
Mm-hmm.
So that's the big differentiator between the template and the master slides. Master slides is static. Template, every option available needs to be in the template for a new instructional designer or an 18-year-old, which two of our interns were, in order for them to use it. If you scroll, click on one more down. The rest of these master slides are the different slides that we use for every single course. So a lesson progress, assumptions, objectives, a navigation slide, what the icons mean. Those are all the different things that you're going to use in each and every course with the layout all set up.
Yeah.
And then when you go into the template and you pull a template to start a new lesson, you'll apply the appropriate layout that you need to your slide. And maybe we should go through what the main structure of each of our slides looks like.
Happy to. That'd be great.
I know Mike has that up.
The finished product?
Yeah, this is kind of where we're driving to. This is the meat of what each lesson looks like. So we've taken out any superfluous information. We've really focused on this is what you need to know, and this is the why. So this first main slide, we call our explain it slide. You can call it anything you want, but it's our explain it. It's got a title, the breadcrumb navigation within the system. So if you're just trying to remember, how do I get to bulk account maintenance? That's how you drive it. And then this is the how and the why, the what and the why is in the explain it slide. And it can scroll, and it really gives you the meat of the information.
Sure. And so you would find this at the end of a lesson, maybe? Is this like the summary, or is this the beginning?
This is the beginning. This is
okay.
Each piece of content has one of these.
Oh, very okay. Excellent.
And then the different icons. So we have the explain it icon, the best practice icon, the knowledge check icon. The tips icon, and then the knowledge check icon. The simulation icon takes you through step by step exactly what you have to do in the system to make this happen.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just click by click by click. And there are some that are really, really, really long, but it lets a user walk through the exact experience they would have in the software.
Give me a sense in how many of these have you created? Because I'm assuming that Accountancy, which it looks like the name of the software is, there's got to be hundreds of options and hundreds of different pathways that you can go down, right?
There's Accountancy alone has 85 lessons within its library.
Mm-hmm.
And we've built out 133 lessons with this framework.
Holy smokes. Yeah, that's intense. All right, great.
And really I feel like one of the greatest achievements for us in this project was doing this with interns, so summer interns. So like Deanna said earlier, we had these 30 lessons that we had created in our old template, and we needed to move them over into our new template that we created, our Trintech branded template. So we had our template, we had our master slides, and then we created a process that allowed us to bring in high school interns, K through 12 teachers, like Deanna said, and we created essentially an e-learning production line. So we started training up the interns. So we used a scaffold approach to train them. So we'd walk them through one specific step, let them then do that multiple times, then walk them through another step, let them do that multiple times. So they get the experience, they get the repetition until they've walked through all the steps necessary. So they would be responsible for moving the content from the old template to the new template. Then the instructional designers, Deanna and myself, we would then review that, make sure it's in the right place, make sure the content's correct. So since we're only needing to focus on the review, that freed us up to create new content with the new template. So the interns are moving it over, we're reviewing it. Then we have another level of review for formatting and branding, and then a final review for NASBA to make sure all of our NASBA required elements are in place before we publish. So again, it's a production line setup where the interns start, we'll review it, and then we'll have a couple more levels of review before it's final, and then we'll just do that for each course. So
I want to let it kind of
85 times.
For me, I just want to let it kind of, I like taking these specific moments and let it really sink in that there's an education process within a process to build education within the process that's educating people, right? Yeah. Like that's, I like that. One of the things I think that is underappreciated in the universe that we're in is just the different layers. It's like everything is learning. And so you had to build a process to teach about building something that's going to teach, which I find, I know we're talking about the multiverse here. And so that's, or maybe it's meta. I don't know.
Metaverse.
Yeah, I don't know. Tell me, explain to me why, I hope this isn't a curveball, but like, was there a reason why interns? Why K through 12 teachers? Was it a cost saving method? Was it, we're going to skill people up thing? Was it a give back thing? Why was there a conscious choice there to use less than professionally skilled individuals to be a part of this project?
I think it was all of the above. So we were able to hire four interns. 4 interns the first summer, for the same cost as one contractor. Mm. So we had previously brought in a contractor to help with the instructional design work, but we were then able to bring in 4 people at the same cost previously of that one contractor. And by the second summer, we brought in 3 more interns, and we were able actually to do more work. Mm. So we were able to do more with less that second summer because of the template, which drove the process. And it was just so well defined at that point. But then also it was very intentional to bring on teachers. And Deanna, do you want to speak to that, being a former educator?
We really wanted to have an internship program. That was something that our VP really wanted us to have an internship program to help give people that leg up to move from classroom to corporate. And then our EVP said, do you have an internship? We need an internship for the kids from my daughter's high school. So that's how we got the high school kids.
Can't say no. Right?
when your EVP says, you will get 2, figure out how to use them. But they were amazing. They were truly, truly amazing. We created a 23-page checklist on how to build. And so it was like, we'd go through 2 pages of it. This is the right way. Here's an example of the wrong way. Go practice. And then the next 2 pages. And so they would build the explain it part, and then they would build the best practices, and then they would build the tips. And I think we had them do the simulations at the very end because that was a little bit more complicated, but we really scaffolded them through the learning, and they were done with their 8-week summer, and they really had some skills.
I was just going to say, so I want to hear both ends of that story. So how long did it take for you to build the training to onboard these interns so that they could be successful? I mean, I'm sure it's iterated over the last 3 years, but like, are we talking weeks, months of time? Like, how much prep time do you have? And then what did they leave with? I mean, are these people who now left this internship program thinking, hey, I kind of figure, I kind of know how to be a designer, or I kind of understand what's behind the educational process at least for this sliver?
I want to brag on us. I want to take the end of it first.
Please do. We
had 2 teachers the first summer, and we had 3 teachers the second summer. All 5 of them have gotten, well, I guess 4 of the 5 have gotten corporate jobs, and the 5th one got an admin job at her school. So
Sweet.
All 5 of them, I mean, and that's terrible. We got them out of the classroom, but that's where they wanted to go. So it really did give them the skill set they needed to
level
launch
up
themselves.
And we hired 2 of them.
We did hire 2 of them.
Hot. That's even better. I mean,
Well,
isn't that the
It's
best internship program, right? Basically, you're bringing people in to identify talents.
It's an
See if they
8-week
work
interview
well.
process. Yeah.
Yeah. 100%.
Yeah.
Awesome. So take me back to the other end of that. I don't know, Mike, whoever wants to put that is. The prep time for this must have been fantastical.
It really was.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Mike. It wasn't that bad.
I would say probably about
a 22-page checklist. I mean, for crying into the night, like.
Well, but see, we already had the process. We were already doing it. It was just getting it documented and work out the kinks. So everything was already in our head. It was just making sure that we had it stepped out for someone else, right? It's like any task that you do that's part of your job, you know how to do it. It just may not be written down anywhere, right? So in case you get hit by a truck and someone else needs to do your job, our boss always tells us, this needs to be documented somewhere. Just in case you can't do it, someone else needs to be able to do it.
You get COVID, you got to be out for 3 weeks, you get pregnant, whatever, you're going to, you're going to take some time off or not be here anymore.
Right. So it was an exercise that needed to take place because we needed to get this written down. So the prep really it didn't take too long. It was just making sure that we had everything covered. And it was explained well enough that someone who had never seen Articulate would be able to understand it and follow through and complete the steps.
And I will say we really tested out the process. So once we thought we had the template, the master slides, and the checklist done, we each built a course using it and found errors, right?
Yeah.
And kept improving it. And then we took that one course, it's a small course, and that's what we submitted to NASBA to get CPE certification. So we had all kinds of cross purposes for creating all of this.
100%. So, I mean, we've already been talking for 25 minutes, surprisingly. And so the thing, it's really easy to do is everything went well, right? I mean, look, this was successful. You trained people, you got product out, learning happened, you got your CBE, all that stuff. Where did you fall on your face? Where, what were the big challenges? What was difficult? What were some of the feedback that you got at DevLearn? Like, what were some of the questions maybe that people were like, hey, I don't believe you, whatever.
Well, fortunately, we didn't get any of those questions that they didn't believe us. I remember one question someone asked, how long until you felt like the interns could work independently? And I thought that was a good question because I hadn't thought about that. And really, maybe a week or 2 weeks in, because of the scaffold approach that we took, we felt like they got the experience, the repetition doing each task. So 1 to 2 weeks after that, because we have a short window with them, 8 weeks, that's not a long time. So they need to ramp up as quickly as possible. So really 2 weeks in, they were independent and they could work independently, and they had their task list and they started working through it. So I thought that was a good question that we got from our session last week.
During our sessions, we had our 4 lessons learned slide. And I think the biggest fail initially, me, blinders on, partner, configuration, don't look at anything else, needed to step back, needed to look at the bigger picture. And so we had to iterate through that. That was definitely something that we failed on initially.
Right. So talk to me about that. I'm sure your colleagues at DevLearn and other instructional designers, the communities that you're a part of, how often have you heard the story, or do you see counseling around, Deanna, like, rather than thinking about how you're going to put the 1,000 hours in, like, what if you stepped back, took a deep breath, and brought in, like basically, rather than always muscle. And I want to take a sub question there of, how hard was it for you to walk away from your own perfectionism and say, look, we can put a process in place that's going to create the quality that I want, but I'm not necessarily going to touch it, every aspect of it.
Oh no, I was excited that we were going to leverage it across more users and across more roles instead of just this configuration role. And previously the layout for training was it was kind of a kerfuffle. It was some easy generator classes. It was some long videos. It was recordings of just people talking. There was no structure to it. So to be able to create this awesome resource that so many people could leverage and get them up to speed so much quicker, it was very, very exciting, very fulfilling that this little configuration piece was now going to become much, much bigger. So I don't think I ever felt like, oh, don't touch my stuff.
Okay. Yeah. But it's Mike, both of you, the question was, did you feel like there was another skill that both of you had to take on, or at least a muscle to build in terms of managing others and managing a process rather than being the designer or being the admin, that kind of thing? Or you kind of came into this with that already ready to go?
But I think what we did with the template and the master slides helped to scratch that control itch for me, because and so this reminds me of another question we got during DevLearn about stifling creativity. But so, it's a very regimented, rigid approach, right? You step through and you're creating it this way, but that's what makes it consistent. So it's always a consistent navigation experience, consistent user experience. Locking down as much as we can, you don't know which instructional designer created the content. And that's the idea. So that's what we're looking for, an efficient, consistent process where anyone can step in. So Deanna could start the session, but I could step in and finish it and you wouldn't know it. And that was the point. So we're giving up control in terms of maybe from start to finish, but what we put in place helps us to control the larger process.
Sure.
And that's what I appreciated in that we knew that whoever started it and whoever finished it, it was going to be, the end product was going to be what we wanted it to be. And I feel like that with the template and the master slides and the checklist, everything we put into place.
Mike and I got to really massage our design chops. I mean, we got to get in there and play and fuss around, and that was pretty fulfilling. And then we gave all these interns some serious articulate skills that they could leave with and put on their resume and demonstrate. So I feel like everybody won in that situation.
Yeah, 100%. So I want to ask you about the stifling creativity, because first of all, creative accounting, I feel like that gets you in jail, right? Like, so for your industry, this sounds like a really good outcome. But even, we talk of like many of the clients at Open LMS, they're higher education institutions. And a lot of times we get feedback saying, look, we have 500 professors at our university. And one thing that we just wish is that we could get them all to use the same class, template or whatever.
Right.
What's the balance there between allowing someone who's creating content, who's creating learning, creative ability, but then in this particular case, I mean, you got a software product, so consistency seems like a really important thing. Is there a moment when you say, okay, that's not so important?
So there's two things there. So when you talk about adult learning theory and adults who really want, just tell me what I need to learn to do my job and leave me alone, I don't care about the rest of it, those are CPAs. I mean, they are the classic, that's what the textbooks are written about, not the creative type. So for our audience, this is the perfect fit, because they truly want to know, what do I need to know to do my job? Leave the rest of it alone. And that's what we did. And that's part of the design of that, is really reducing the cognitive load that they need to absorb our content. Yeah. So I felt like that was a super win-win in terms of us being able to be creative and kind of, use those chops. I mean, we're still doing webinars. We're still doing virtual instructor-led training. We're still doing movies. There's still things that we're doing where we really get to be creative and find our groove for that. So I was not surprised at the question because it does look very regimented, but that's what our learners need. So
especially in this, I'm really glad that you helped us remember that there's a bigger universe, especially at Trintech, around instructor-led stuff and, synchronous learning and, other things that are happening, because this is really just a particular learning pathway that fits a particular need for your partner.
It's just one offering, right? It's one of many offerings that we provide. And like Deanna said, you can be creative in your visuals, in your graphics and all of this can still operate within a template, right? Mm-hmm. So the idea is we don't want somebody to have to learn how to navigate my course because it's completely different than everything else that we've created. The application's complex enough. We don't need to add another layer of complexity to it by them trying to figure out how to navigate through our course that we've created. So you can still be creative within the confines of an established template or branding or requirements that are in place.
Awesome.
And that really honors and respects your learners, right? I mean, they have limited time. They want to get to the information they need to get to. We don't need the song and dance and the dancing polar bears.
I like those polar bears.
Polar bears are great, but I mean, for the most part, adults truly just want to know, what do I need to do to do my job better? And 100%. Let us help them do that.
So take us sort of kind of wrap this up. Like, what were there any more of those lessons learned that you want to put on the table? And then really the question is, what's next? I mean, does this process kind of live on its own now? How are you going to continue to improve it? Is there a next iteration or next step that you see in the future here, or what's going to happen?
I would think so. Deanna hit on our first lesson learned, and then so stepping back and thinking about who the content can serve, I would just reiterate: figure out how you can maximize the use of your template and master slides. So don't back yourself into a corner design-wise when you're thinking about your template and your master slides. Think, what is the broadest possible use case for this, right? How can we use this for as many things as possible? And then start creating at that level. And I think really every decision needs to start at that level. What is the maximum use case that we can use this content for? Because we've done that, and we've been able to use content that we've created in 4 or 5 different places, which means we only have to update it once instead of 4 or 5 times.
Well, and we've really pushed the icons, the logos, the breadcrumb trails to our manuals, to our webinars, to every piece of content that we create is pushing that consistency. So a learner doesn't have to figure out, well, what's this new icon mean? It's like, oh no, this is a best practices icon. I know that that's what I'm going to find under that in this document. So we've pushed it pretty much as far as we can possibly push it.
So then this is me innocently asking, your colleagues who work for other similar companies or have similar roles, is there an aha moment here where they're like, oh wow, if I just kind of keep things consistent, it works better? Like, do you still find, in the communities of practice that you're a part of, there's just a jumble out there, and creating a consistent process like this is just, it just doesn't get done?
Absolutely. I worked for a mortgage company, and every single lesson was a completely different layout. It was a completely different setup, different navigation, and you're still teaching them about the same piece of software, just a different area of it. But every time you took a lesson, it was like, oh gosh, what am I into now? Right. And the learners didn't like it. I mean, as an instructional designer, it was like fun, but it didn't serve your learners. So ultimately, you got to put your learner at the center of what you're creating and figure out who they are and what they need and serve that.
Sure. Mike, any final words from you about what's next, lesson learned, where do you want to go with this?
Yeah. What's next for us is always be iterating, right? So we work for a software company, so there's always the next release. So I'm just excited about what we're going to do for our iteration process. So for me, I love the process, developing the process, the attention to detail aspect of things. So I'm looking forward to figuring out how we can maximize our efficiency for our update process next. So we've got the content created. Now we just have to figure out how can we keep it maintained and updated as efficiently as possible.
You've just named the bane of every software provider or service provider, because the engineers are going to change that one thing. That means you have to change every single slide. Darn it.
Well, and it never ends, right? So there's always a push for new content, which is great. But then that new content goes into that list of things that we need to maintain going forward. Well, it's hard to maintain now, but let's just keep adding stuff to make that list even longer. So yeah, we're going to have to figure out how we can shorten that timeline as much as possible.
Fantastic. Deanna Flanagan and Mike Belknap, I cannot thank you enough for taking the time out of your clearly super busy days to talk to us about the process that you created over there at Trintech. The interns you used, and how you created consistency across this learning platform. How can people find you? Is it, if people want to reach out to you, is LinkedIn best, or is there a way they could say, hey, I want to learn how to do this too?
Yeah, LinkedIn, definitely.
LinkedIn's fine. And we're both, I'm Deanna.Flanagan at Trintech.com, and Mike is Mike Belknap at Trintech.com. So
super cool. Well, thank you so much. I wish you the best, and we will talk to you next. Thank you again for listening to the eLearn podcast. I just wanted to take one last moment here to ask you to, if you enjoyed this episode, if you learned something, if you had fun, if you liked the guest, if you wanted to learn more, if you feel like sharing this with somebody, do me a favor. Hit subscribe on your podcast player right now. Just do it right now before the episode ends. Hit subscribe, and that way you'll never miss an episode as we publish them every week. Thanks.